All right. All right. So as people filter in, it looks like we have a couple of attendees filtering in. I want to be respectful of everyone's time today. So I want to thank you all so much for taking the time to be here this afternoon. And for those who are filtering in the audience right now, I want to just start off by congratulating you all because you are approaching graduation in less than a month, which is just so exciting. And the three alumni panelists that we have here today are just a few years ahead of you. So we're continuing our senior week programming today. With a panel of Penn State alumni who are currently enrolled in various graduate and professional school programs. So before we get started, I'd like to just introduce each of them. So first we have Brian Anthony Davis. So he is Associate Director of Equity and Inclusion at St. Ignatius College Preparatory in San Francisco, California. Along with this role at St. Ignatius, he also teaches a ninth grade ethics studies course. Additionally, Brian is incoming doctoral student of education at the University of San Francisco in international and multicultural education, focusing on racial justice in education. A graduate of the Penn State University College of the Liberal Arts in 2018, he is an unrelenting educator, award-winning activist, yoga teacher, historian, and passionate about creating a world of critical thinkers, racial justice advocates, and yoga for self-exploration. Brian's speaking engagements around the US led to Brian being highly sought out by TEDx. In 2017, he was selected to give a TED Talk at TEDx PSU. His TED Talk has won him national recognition for his thoughtfulness and sophistication on issues of inequality, racism, and the criminal justice system. Outside of education, Brian teaches yoga at the University of San Francisco and ocean yoga in Pacifica, California. He is a 300-hour CYT specializing in Hatha Yoga and Power Vinyasa Flow Yoga. So welcome, Brian, and just a shout out to his TED Talk. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend. All right, so next we have Bria Gray, who is a current 2L at the University of Maryland Francis King Carey School of Law, and is from Frederick, Maryland. She graduated from Penn State in December of 2018 with a double major in psychology and criminology. While at Penn State, she was captain of the cheerleading team and a Thon volunteer on the special events and OPP committees. While at law school, she serves as a staff editor on the Journal of Business and Technology Law, as well as secretary of the Black Law Students Association. Along with school, she has worked part-time as a law clerk at Maryland Legal Aid in the Consumer Law Department. Her interests and experience range from criminal defense law to business law. And last but not least, we have Sarah Mckenna with us. So she graduated from Penn State in 2019 with degrees in history and political science. She was a Paterno Fellow and a Schreyer Honor Scholar. While at Penn State, she was involved in Liberal Arts Ambassadors Club Swimming and Thon. She was also an intern at Gettysburg National Military Park and the Richards Center and studied abroad in Rome. She will be graduating with a master's in library and information science from the University of Maryland in May. Since being at UMD, she has worked as a graduate assistant in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions and as a student assistant on the Historic Maryland Newspapers Project. Outside of University of Maryland, she recently wrapped up a remote internship with the Law Library of Congress and is a contributing writer for the blog Hack Library School. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we'll go into speaker view. And I want to kick the panel off by asking each of you to just talk a little bit about what influenced your decision to attend graduate school. So any one of you can start.
I can start off. So I went into undergrad actually thinking I was going to go to graduate school, but as a psych major and maybe pursuing a master's degree or possibly a doctorate degree. So I took a couple classes specifically in psych and learned that like science and math really weren't my go-to. So I started to explore different classes within Penn State, and that's when I developed criminal justice and like a passion for that. And through my intern experiences at the Public Defender Service in Washington, D.C., was really what gatewayed me into the legal field. Watching attorneys practice and kind of getting experience in the legal field is really what kind of inspired me to go into law. And then that kind of continued as I seen like continuously inequities and injustices around the world. And that really fostered my passion to go into law school.
Awesome. Thanks, Bria.
I can follow up with that. At Penn State, when I attended, I was a part of the Ronald McNair Scholars Program, which is a intensive undergraduate to PhD research program for students who want to seek PhDs. And kind of like Bria said, I kind of knew I was going to do a doctorate degree because it was just something like a goal of mine. But I felt like obviously you got to take the steps to get there, but importantly, actually, I mean, and I'll probably talk about this in another question, but I was kind of undecided actually about my research interests, which sort of led me to pursuing an EDD, but pursuing human rights education, where I can sort of combine all of my interests into one sort of framework. So that's kind of, for me, that's kind of what led me there. And I also wanted more. I felt like Penn State gave me a lot, but I wanted more. So had to go to grad school.
I was in a very similar position. So I started out at Penn State as a double major with history and secondary education, completely set on being high school. As I went through my classes, I realized that wasn't just completely for me at that point in time. And I started exploring, especially with my honors thesis with priors, how we access information, especially historical documents, archives. So that got me interested in library science programs. We transitioned to working more in a museum or an archive setting. And so from there, I applied to University of Maryland's library science program, and I'm about to graduate.
That's great. Thank you so much, all of you. Real quick, Sarah, you were breaking up a little bit in your answer. So for the next one, I might just pause just to make sure we have a good connection. But so thank you so much. All right. So the next question I have for each of you is, when you were deciding to go to graduate school, law school, what were some of the factors that you were taking into consideration when making that choice?
I think for myself, I was in a space where, I didn't go right to a PhD program out of Penn State. I actually went to work first. So I needed to find, for me, a program that allowed you to work as well as pursue graduate school full time. So I'm actually doing a doctorate of education, an EDD degree, which is, similar, but for me, it was like finding something that aligned with my passions, with my goals, and also really, I looked at all the programs here in California, UC Berkeley, Stanford, but I wanted to find professors that were actually doing the work that I wanted to do, that were already in the field on a grassroots level. And then from there, finding something that aligned with my schedule, because when you're a PhD student, it's sort of different. You're like there full time, but me working as a director as well as pursuing school, I needed to find something that allowed me to do both simultaneously.
That's great, Brian, especially like considering work-life balance and some of the other factors that you have in making your decision. Sarah, Bria, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I can touch on that a little bit. I know for law school in particular, there's an entrance exam, so you have to take the LSAT to apply to law school. So that was an important factor in determining my timeline and if I wanted to work after graduating from undergrad or if I wanted to go straight through. And ultimately for me, I graduated a semester early in December. So I had one semester, the spring semester, to kind of relax. And the way my mind and my gears were set up, I was already in a full school mode. So it just made the most sense for me to continue throughout right after graduating because I didn't want to kind of get relaxed into working full time. So based off that decision, I had to make a timeline for myself as to when I wanted to take the LSAT. And then from there, it was kind of looking at what schools I wanted to apply to. And I know for the area of law, it's really based and factored into possibly like where you get scholarship money, but also really where you want to practice law. And I'm from the Maryland area, so it really made sense that I wanted to come back home, also get in-state tuition. And this is ultimately where I want to practice in the DC area. So I did research and just networked with a bunch of alumni and went to school events and panels. The law school also, or excuse me, the undergraduate school at Penn State also hosts a law school fair. So I attended that where I was able to talk to a lot of different admission counselors and get really an idea of the timeline of applying and what I would need to do to apply.
All right, how does this sound better?
It's still a little iffy, but feel free to keep going, and then we can pause if we need.
Okay, yeah, just holler. So I would say the big influence for me to go to grad school was by going back to my interest with archives and learning how we access information, especially in the digital world and the remote environment that we're especially in today. So kind of what Bria said with the LSAT, that really applied to me with the GRE as well. Some of the programs I applied for, they required GRE, others did not. There was one program that was optional. So that was also a factor for me trying to figure out, when should I take the GRE, how should I be studying for it, things along those lines. And once all that was established, I received my admissions offers to my schools. It did came down to location and funding opportunities. So the great thing about the University of Maryland is that they have a lot of graduate assistant and teaching assistant positions. They're just incredibly fortunate for grad students, especially to have some sort of funding, both in terms of tuition and living costs, especially in the DC area.
That's great. Thank you so much, Sarah. So I guess the next question I have is for all of you. What do you feel like helped you prepare the most for graduate school? And is there anything that you would have done differently to prepare?
I can start. I think law school is very unique in the sense that very little things honestly can prepare you for it. The way law school is structured, your teaching style, your exam styles, basically everything is completely different from undergraduate schools. So I would say that there's nothing in particular, no specific class, no specific technique that you can do to technically quote unquote prepare you for law school, but things that kind of helped were just having great time management skills and organizational skills. And that kind of helped me balance my workload. So I would say internships experiences really helped me learn how to do real world work and balance that work along with school and my just extracurricular activities is the best way that I was quote unquote prepared. But honestly, there's very little, at least in the legal field, you can't really prepare yourself. So my best advice would be relax before you go in. Like that's the best way to prepare is to take a break and just to really kind of have a schedule for yourself and really know how to organize your priorities.
Yeah, I agree with that. I took a gap year before I started my pursuit of my master's and doctorate degree. And, my program was, again, it's a little different because it's an intensive master's and intensive doctoral program. So my classes are like 4 hours long, but I only had class twice a month, right? Only one day, twice a month. But I think, like Bria said, or being organized. And I would also say, your ideas can change over time as you pursue graduate school, but I like to like organize from the beginning. Like the first day I started grad school, I was already formatting my like master's thesis, like paper already. I like to just add little stuff there and there. But I think the best advice is to build their relationship with your professors and classmates, because depending on the circumstance, it might be all PhD students, but in my case, I'm in the classrooms with presidents of universities, principals, so we all kind of are already in the field, but the sort of horizontal relationship between professors and students is really, really important within a graduate school setting.
Great. Thank you so much, Bria and Brian. Those are really good tips, the organization piece of things, especially. Just to let all of you know, Sarah is going to adjust her audio issues, and then we'll be right back, hopefully. So we're just going to continue on with some of our questions. And I also want to encourage all of those who are in attendance, please, if you have any questions, we have our panel of experts here. So don't be afraid to put your questions in the Q&A. So the next question I have for you both are, do you feel like is the biggest difference between an undergraduate education and the type of learning that you're doing now in graduate school and law school?
I would definitely say it's way more reading, way more reading. You know, and more reflection as well. Like I know, like you might have like 8 readings to do for a particular weekend of class or week of class, and you might have to write a 1,500 word reflection about that as well. But I think it inadvertently sharpens your tools, right? I think at Penn State, when I was in liberal arts, I majored in African American studies, and they made sure we were well read. But I think now it's like, you know, you need to know the scholars in the field, know where the gaps are, right, and also formulate your own ideas from all of that reading, right? So.
Yeah, I would piggyback off of that. And also, I just wanted to backtrack to the last question and piggyback off of what Brian said. I think networking and just talking to people who are already in your field is honestly the best way you can prepare, just to talk to people who are actually doing the work right now and can tell you what it's like firsthand. But then the way law school is different from undergrad, I would say, like Brian said, it's very reading heavy. And I would say, as a liberal arts major, you probably do read a fair amount in your classes. And not to say that everyone does this, but it's easier to get by maybe skimming a couple pages here and there and not doing as detailed reading as you should. But at least in law school, and I'm sure with most graduate programs, that changes significantly, and you're held accountable for your readings and for that knowledge and information. And I would also say it moves at a lot faster pace, and it's not as spoon-fed, if you will. At least in law school, we have one exam that's given to you at the end of the semester. So it's really on you to determine how well you're doing in the class, to have those check-ins. You don't have small assignments or multiple tests to get a feel for your professor or to get a feel of your knowledge. So it's really important that you take accountability and just take firsthand responsibility for your education and for the skills that you're learning in class, to really make sure that you're prepared for the final when it comes.
Thank you both. I would agree, as somebody who went through a counseling master's program, it's very reading heavy, but I feel like those readings kind of, what Brian was saying, sharpen your skills, because everything's kind of scaffolding and compounding off of each other, and you're able to look at things in a more holistic way. So Sarah, since you're back, the question was what you feel as though is the biggest difference between your undergraduate and your graduate education.
Sure. All right. Sound test.
Perfect.
Fantastic.
Perfect.
Technology at its finest. I would say the biggest difference, definitely what Bria was saying about readings and the workload and kind of taking responsibility for your own education. My program actually was very project heavy. So instead of focusing on exams for several classes, I was doing a lot of projects for a lot of different classes. So one of the core classes, for example, that I took in my very first semester focused on creating any type of project you wanted on any topic for a specific population of users. So my project, that was the first interaction I ever had with graduate school. I was in a group of 6 students, including myself. So trying to work out the schedules between everybody was also kind of a new area for me as well, especially I was personally working almost full time at that point. Others were working different jobs on campus, off campus, commuting to and from. So I think just a different population of students who are all crossing over in grad school world, but also living different parts of their lives at different points.
Can I piggyback on that too? I will say too, what I've sort of learned from going between the master's and the doctoral classes is that most professors, and it might be very different in law school, but they will let you know, like, you don't have to read the full article, right? Like, I think in undergrad, I would read everything front to back, cover to cover, all the way through the appendix and the references. But like, I think in grad school, they say eat the fish, spit out the bones, but you just get what you need, You might just need to read somebody's abstract or their introduction, and that might be it, right? It's more direct and above the undergraduate level.
Bria, would you say that that is similar to what you're experiencing in law school as well?
Actually, I would say it's a little bit of the opposite. In law school, you are responsible for the opinion of a case, the dissents, every judge's dissent, concurrence, or whatever that may be. And it really is dependent on the professor. Some professors may just need the bare bones of the case and really get straight to the point. But there's other professors who really want you to know the inner philosophy thinking. So I think once you get the feel for a professor, you'll really be able to determine. But when you're first starting off in a class, you're going to want to read in detail and really understand each part of it, because you get cold called in law school and a professor might just call you on a really random fact that you're not expecting. So at least in the beginning, it's really good to kind of do the extra reading. And then as you progress, you can figure out where you can kind of cut corners a little bit.
Absolutely. Thank you both. Great. So I think that there was a question that came through the chat. So Taya has a question that says, what is one piece of advice you wish someone told you the first day beginning classes? So think about like your first day of law school, the first day of the programs that you are all in your master's and upcoming doctoral programs. What is one thing that you wish somebody would have told you?
I can start. I think people do tell you this, or they at least told me this, but you don't really believe it. It's just to like relax, that everyone, at least in law school, everyone is kind of confused and as nervous as you are. And people say that, but you still kind of get the feeling that everyone around you just knows what they're doing, and just everyone seems to have it all together, and you're just kind of like, what is happening? But honestly, truly, everyone is really confused. So I think just take a deep breath on your first day of classes or orientation or whatever it may be. And no matter how much the person next to you is pretending like they just read every case or every reading for the whole semester, they haven't, and they are confused just like you are.
Yeah, I put the answer in the chat, but I said the university is blessed to have a scholar like you. I think sometimes we get so caught up in trying to whether it's perform, try to be the perfectionist and try to be this X, Y, and Z type of student, that we forget that we are bringing so many gifts to this particular classroom setting, to writing, to law review boards, right, to internships, and we gotta carry those gifts with us in these spaces and always remember that, despite the pursuit of whatever particular degree that we're trying to pursue.
Yeah, to go off of that, I would say don't be afraid to explore. Even coming into grad school with a mindset of what you may want to do, that could change in whatever way possible, especially shifting through the pandemic to online learning. your research interests may change. You may have to pivot with internships or theses or capstone projects, what have you. I think just taking that time to explore a little bit in your program is incredibly helpful to figure out what you like, what you're interested in, but also what you really don't want to do with a particular path that may relate to your degree.
That's great. Thank you, all of you. So the next question I have for you all is, what was the biggest challenge you faced in transitioning from your undergraduate education to graduate and professional school? And then on the flip side, what was easy about your transition? Like, what did you think would be really difficult, but wound up not being as scary as it seemed?
I'll say to cover both now that I'm thinking about it is just scheduling, especially for myself. My classes in a pre COVID world were 3 hours long in person, 1 day a week for each class. So knowing that I had those chunks of time, I had to obviously be available for class. I also worked 2 jobs on University of Maryland's campus that I had to work around classes for. So in a way, the hard part was adjusting to that schedule, working 9 to 5, then having to go to class from 6 to 8:45 at night. But at the same time, it kind of made it easier in terms of blocking things off, knowing that, okay, I'm working 9 to 5 this day, but I'm working at this job 10 to 1, then class, and then I have the evening to do homework or relax or whatever else I need to do outside of work and school. So in a sense, scheduling is nice, but at the same time, it can be a little challenging to adjust to, especially coming from undergrad.
I would piggyback 100% in terms of finding balance. I think I think what Sarah was speaking to is finding balance with everything else that you juggle. Some of us are like magicians with this stuff, but for me, it was like, I work as a director full time of a center, as well as a full time yoga teacher, full time student, right? And I'm working like 80, 90 hours a week, right? Some of it, I don't count yoga as like work, but anything you're getting paid for is kind of considered work. But that's why I sort of find my place of refuge on a yoga mat, right? But the amount of because I'm in intensive programs, the amount of schoolwork and readings and writings, I'm like, well, this is a lot. And I kind of feel like now that I'm doing all of this simultaneously, I see the other side of when I was a student at Penn State and doing student organizing and stuff. And I'm like, I never saw the administrative side to things until now, to say oh, it's way more that you do not consider as a student, right? And then one thing I would say, the opposite of didn't go so well, I think sometimes you almost going back to that last answer, sometimes you feel like you don't know enough yet to speak on certain things, right? And I can imagine in law school that as you all learn these concepts, that can really apply. So I found that sort of a difficult thing sometimes. So.
Yeah, I would just piggyback off of that. It's a little different, but scheduling is still important. In law school, they give you your schedule for you your first year. So you have no say into when your classes are, but these are your classes and you are not allowed to work. There's really rare circumstances that you can work. So because of that, it's really easy to get caught up in school and to just focus on school, your readings all day, every day. So I think although you're not scheduling around another job, but you also have a life outside of school, whether that's your extracurriculars, spending time with your family, or just going outside or eating food. It's really important to have that work-life balance. And I think that is something that is the hardest thing to juggle and the biggest transition, because in undergrad, I feel like I had more time than I do now, or there wasn't a pressure, I would say. Whereas in law school, the setting and just the cultural setting is very high pressure and high intensity. So just finding that balance and really being able to step away from what everyone else around you is doing and just know this is what works for me and I'm going to do this regardless of what my classmates are doing.
That actually leads really well into my next question for you all. So what does that work-life balance look like for you all? And how did, like, what were some of the things that you did to get to that point?
I can start just going off of my last answer. So yeah, like I said, you get your classes scheduled for you and you aren't allowed to work. So in the beginning, I found myself going to class, coming home, reading for class, going to bed, and going to class again. And that was kind of just like a cycle for me the first few weeks of law school. And I realized like this was not going to work for my mental health. I was becoming like so drained and so tired. So for me, I really put in my planner, I'm a really schedule oriented person. So I schedule out times that I'm going to just take for myself, whether that's I'm going to the gym at this time or I'm on Saturday mornings. Like I don't do any work. Like I don't really care how important something is. I like give myself that break. Like I'm not doing work on Saturday mornings and like in the afternoons, I'm going to go to the gym every day. So for me, putting it into your schedule and although it's easier said than done, but prioritizing your non-work duties as much as you prioritize your schoolwork duties is really important and it will help keep you sane.
Agreed. I think that, yeah, balance is essential to the soul. Like Bria said, finding, like, sometimes I would just say, I'm not doing no schoolwork this whole week. And as yeah, you're a student in like undergrad, but you're an adult in grad school, right? Like you make all decisions, right? You can even tell your professor, hey, busy week, not going to be able to get the readings done. But you show up to class, and no, for what it's worth, in some cases, professors aren't checking if you did the readings, right? Um, you'll be able to show and display your knowledge of the readings in different settings, right? But like Bria said, I think the luxury here of being in California is that I work 4 blocks away from the beach. So I go to the beach like every day. I was actually there this morning. But going to the beach, I got the bike behind me, or I go to the gym, or like I said, doing yoga. Because you know, we have to, one, count our small victories, right? But also just being mindful that we have to pour into ourselves as much as we're pouring out.
It's like I would second all of that. I know for me personally, that Sunday afternoon workout and Sunday night dinner meal prep is my saving grace. That is kind of time I take to not only just give myself a break from doing work in general, but also kind of preparing myself for the week ahead, knowing that I at least have dinner for a few nights leading up in the early on in the week. Just kind of helps me orient myself and know how to again prioritize what I need outside of school and also again find that balance that is crucial in not only any job but also in grad school.
That's great. Thank you all. I think that work-life balance is a very personal thing. And it sounds like you've all found a couple of different things that work specifically for you. So that's all really great. So I guess, so my next question would be involving extracurriculars outside of graduate school and law school. So do you do research? Do you have a graduate assistant position, internships? If so, how did you go about finding those and kind of capitalizing on these experiences outside of school?
I'll say I kind of brought this up a little bit earlier, but with the University of Maryland, they have several grad assistant, teaching assistantship positions out there. And so they vary a little bit by length in terms of contract, but otherwise they pretty much like fantastic benefits in terms of tuition and living cost of living in the DC area. But I got that position actually in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions through just Maryland's job portal. They have a tab specifically for student employment and assistantships. And that's where I ended up finding my position. And what really got me into this position with Office of Undergraduate Admissions was my time at Penn State and my extracurricular activities there. So as Lauren mentioned earlier, I was part of what's now called the Liberal Arts and Ambassadors organization. So basically the faces of the College of the Liberal Arts. And my work doing with that organization, my admissions boss actually told me like that's the reason why we called you for an interview, was doing that work. And that led me to basically getting my master's degree at a much more affordable rate, with especially with out-of-state tuition and all that. And then my current position as well with the the Historic Maryland Newspapers Project, that actually saw on a listserv from University of Maryland iSchool. And I saw, sounded interesting. I applied, ended up getting the position. And that was my first taste of working in libraries, especially being in a master's in library science program. So I think just keeping an eye out for those opportunities that come up. If it sounds interesting to you, just go for it.
Yeah, I'll piggyback. I think Sarah made a really good point that sometimes goes overlooked, because when you're undergrad at Penn State and you're so involved, sometimes people feel like that's not noticed. And piggybacking on Sarah, I actually got offered the job as a director now when I was a junior at Penn State, given all the work I was doing as a student. And my job realized that I can do that for the whole center, and they wanted me to leave Philadelphia. I grew up in West Philly, and go to San Francisco and bring those talents there, right? All from, student org stuff, but I also was doing other extra stuff, right? Like studying abroad and things. But just, I think a lot of opportunities in grad school come to you because when you use your voice, when you show your expertise, professors, they talk. I didn't put in my bio, but I'm actually an instructor at USF as well. So I kind of like, it's weird because like the students that are in the class that I teach, they're also my classmates in another class, but like, it's all love, right? But I took the class, and then the teacher was like, hey, I would love for you to teach this class with me, right? I've also published research in our International Journal for Human Rights Education, based on my, classwork stuff. They wanted me to, write in the journal. And then I want to say, and this might be the same for law school too, but you'll get billions of emails about calls for papers, and all your friends will be like, yo, we should write this. Let's do this. You want to write this? So I think I've been just so inundated with like, yo, everybody wants to write together. Everybody wants to publish, right? So I think you have a lot of opportunities that come to you, and then there's some that you want to seek, like, oh, I need that, I want that, right? And you position yourself to do that accordingly.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, in law school, your first year is really focused on academics. So you really get the opportunity to kind of just dabble into a lot of different areas with very low commitment and very low pressure, because it's the understanding that you're going to be focusing on your school. So you can just attend a meeting here, attend an event here, and go to this organization fair where there's millions of organizations and they all offer some type of free pizza, some type of free food to get you in the door. So for anything, at least get like a free meal for the night and just try out all the different things. You might come into your program thinking you really want to do X and just go to one event that could make you really interested in other things. And that's kind of what led me to my experiences. I came in really wanting to do criminal law. That was my whole driving factor. And just by kind of shopping around and going to different organization fairs, I became interested in business law and consumer law. So I just think exploring is a really great opportunity. And especially in law school, it's such a low commitment in your first year, and you really get the opportunity to explore all those different things that you might not have the chance to do after.
That's great. Thank you all so much. And Bria, especially, I love that point of like, just because you are in a specific type of program, that doesn't mean that you can't explore and take different opportunities to find niches within your general field. So I love that. So kind of moving more back toward classes and different things like that. I'm wondering if you all could describe the relationships that you have with professors? How do you work with them? Are they supportive? Are they tough? What does your advisor within graduate school look like? Kind of going off of that.
Yeah, I would say I have not met one professor that does not want to see you succeed. Um, and I'm sort of that student, and I was like this at Penn State. Like I always email each professor at the beginning of the semester and say, I want you to go extremely hard on comments on my papers. You know, I want you to, like, I need it because I want you to sharpen me and mold me into the scholar and writer I want to be, right? That you believe I have the potential to be. But also, I mean, like, just like at Penn State, I was having dinners with professors. Like I like to build personal relationships because I think it helps in the scholar setting that they know you personally, right? So they can see you right, like, hey, you know, I see this, but I feel like this was what you're trying to say here. Like, for example, you know, actually today, my master's field project was approved by the university, but like, I just emailed my professor. I had some trouble with some like chapter stuff. You know, we were on Zoom at 11 at night, you know, she was like, you know, no problem, I got you. So I think that grad school, and you know, I won't be able to speak to law school, but I'm sure this applies. But grad school is exactly what you make it, and it's not like undergrad where, like, you know, those classes where 700 students in one class in like Thomas Hall or something. But like it's very personal, right? And very like professors have your back. They want you to produce. They want you to write, and they want to just see you succeed. So those relationships are everything.
I'll say some of the most supportive people I've ever met are in grad school, especially with my professors. And even as I was doing that exploring, trying to decide, you know, which path in librarianship do I want to go down. Once I started to figure that out and talk to some of my professors, that led me taking other classes and or not research opportunities, internships, and just learning more about librarianship in general. And my professors, they again want you to succeed in whatever you're doing. And even I laugh about it now, but even my class last night, my professor said, like, I've had a rough week. I know a lot of you guys had a rough week. Like, I totally understand if you just need to take a step back. Your assignment that was due today, submitted by Friday, no problem. So again, just kind of this very supportive. We're all in the same boat. My professors, again, all went to grad school as well for masters, PhDs, law school, all that. So they understand. And I think that is incredibly beneficial to be on that receiving end, but also is kind of make that connection with those professors.
Yeah, I would echo everything that was said. Professors really want you to do the best. Most of them do their job because they love what they do and they love producing students and colleagues, their future colleagues, to be the best versions of themselves. But additionally, like Brian said, it really is what you make it. Law school, I think honestly going to Penn State has given me a little bit of an advantage because although I don't have lecture halls with 300 students, I do have lecture halls sometimes of 80 to 100 students. And there are a lot of students in my classes who aren't even used to that. And it's given me an edge on just really how to work the room and how to connect with those professors and just to read the reading room and do that type of classroom setting, whereas some students aren't used to that. So I think it's really great to kind of take it upon yourself to reach out to those professors. Most professors at my school, and I'm sure in most programs, have an open door policy and they want you to reach out to them. Most of the time, they're not going to like come knocking on your door, but if you honestly just go into their door and talk. And I think I normally get scared because, especially in liberal arts, I used to get nervous going into office hours because I'm like, oh, it's not a math problem that I need help with. Or like, I don't understand this equation. Like, I just do the reading and I get it. But you don't really have to have a certain thing to talk about. Just go to introduce yourself and just let organic conversations happen. And then naturally you guys will start to build a relationship and things will come up. So when you do need those letter recommendations or just advice on internships, they'll be there for you. So you don't have to have a real question to go up and speak to them.
Just to piggyback off that, Bria made a good point about the power of a Penn State degree. And I know we are talking about grad school, but like that degree speaks volumes. People know what you experience when you have a Penn State degree, especially a Penn State liberal arts degree. And like I know out here on the West Coast, when I tell them I went to Penn State, they know what's up, you know. And you enter into rooms differently because of what took place in your experience at Penn State. You might not recognize it now, but when you go to other institutions, you will see, wow, Sarah was Schreier's honor student. Like they mold you in a particular way. And then Bria also mentioned another point that I think is really important is that these, your advisors, it's not like I know when I was at Penn State, my advisor probably had like 40 or 50 other students, right? And they doing the basics, like meeting with you, making sure you're doing this class and that. But in grad school, like Bria said, like professors will think about you when they see opportunities. Like, oh hey, just saw this grant, Brian, you should apply for it, right? I think it'll go great with this, right? Or maybe you should submit to this, right? So I think they're very intentional about the relationship on the opposite way too. It's not just you to them. It's very horizontal and parallel as well. So.
Absolutely. I think that it kind of you're stepping into becoming one of their colleagues, right? At that level, which is incredibly exciting. And I'm so glad that all of you have had those positive experiences. I know that it was the same for me when I was in graduate school too. So talking a little bit more about classwork, things like that. I'm wondering how intense are your classes and exams, projects, papers compared to undergrad? How much time per week do you spend working on classwork? Things like that.
Yeah, I can start just because I'm getting ready to go into finals week, so it's really fresh on my mind right now. I would say in law school, you have typically one exam at the end of your semester for each class, and that determines your whole grade. So throughout the semester, it's really important that you do check-ins with yourself and check-ins with your professor to make sure that you are actually grasping the material, because you might think you are, and you find out you really aren't. And there's only one opportunity to do it, honestly. So I would say the workload is extremely different and the testing style is different. Typical tests are 3-hour exams where you're just writing to really long fact patterns and they're just essay based. You have few multiple choice professors, but most of your exams will be like a long essay and you're just kind of typing and going at it for 3 hours. Additionally, something that I found different was I know at Penn State, your finals or like your reading week, quote unquote, like you could end classes on Friday and then have a final that Monday. At least in law school, I'm not sure at all programs, you get a pretty long reading week. So I'm going to end my classes on Monday coming up, and then my first final isn't until the following Monday. So you do have a longer period of time to really study and grasp those topics. And I think that's a good and a bad thing because it's really easy to say, oh, I have this whole week, I can push it off for as long as possible. But the exams and the projects and the papers are so much more intense than in undergrad. You really need that whole week, if not more, probably more, to study. So all-nighters don't really work. You need to be putting in the time ahead of time to really grasp the concepts and be successful.
Say most of my program is actually very, again, project based. I was just counting in my head. I think I've had probably 7 quizzes / exams this entire 4-semester long program. And even with these projects, a lot of them do vary. I would say about half of them, they were long-term projects over the semester with the final deliverable due at the end, either the last day of class or during Maryland's finals week. Or it's just a final project or a final paper that may have built off a midterm project at some point, or just the second half of readings, things like that. So kind of what Bria was saying is that, again, you hold yourself accountable and you do kind of have to keep chipping away throughout the semester or throughout a certain period of time. You really can't just put all of it off until the last week of classes and you're like, oh boy, here we go. And even the lengths of projects again do vary too. I've had some projects again go the entire semester, group projects. Others were just a PowerPoint presentation along with a paper to submit to the professor and the TA. And then this semester, I'm also working on a 25 page paper. So again, a lot of it does vary depending on your program as well as the specific class.
Yeah, I agree. I'm School of Education, and a little different. I've had some classes where there is no big assignment for the class. They just want you to get the theories, right? And just see how you think, right? And I would say I'm not, don't take this as fully fact, but from the conversations I've talked to with my friends who are in PhD programs and other, there's no exams in grad school, like in law school for sure, but like, I mean, besides like your qualifying exams, like presentations for, showing folks that you know what you're talking about, but there's no like, all right, got to go to the testing center, got to, there's nothing like that. And I think like you might, like for most of my classes, it's been like writing a like annotated bibliography, right? APA, right? Stuff like that. But yeah, I think there's no, like for your master's thesis or doctoral dissertation, there's no page requirement, even though you're going to be in like the 60 to, well, for your master's like 60 to 100 range, and doctoral you might be 200 to 400 range, but it's all relative. And here at USF, our professors respond in real time to world things that are happening. So they've shifted grading to, they call it the humanizing A, which means if you do everything, all the assignments to whatever degree you can, you'll get an A in the course, right? And they also have reduced all sort of loads for the assignments, because they know that at this moment it's just so much, especially with Zoom fatigue. But I think it all just varies based on institution.
That's great. Thank you guys all. So my next question for you all would be kind of going off of that and thinking about how you find support in graduate school, whether it's through classes, extracurriculars, professors, things like that. Are there any particular resources that you've taken advantage of at your school, outside of school, that have really helped you throughout your time in grad school? Anything you would recommend?
I can start. For me, I do not have many lawyers in my family or a lot of people that I know have gone to law school. So I really took advantage of networking opportunities to find sense of mentorship and someone that I could speak to. And then this is going to be like very different depending on the person. But for me, being a Black student, I'm a part of the Black Law Students Association in law school. So that is a great group to have, and every school and every organization has some type of affinity group for no matter what that may be for you, whether it's religion, race, or just like something you're interested in. But having some people that you really can connect to and relate to on things outside of the legal field for law school particularly, and just like things that are going around in the world that I can relate to, people that can kind of just like foster that conversation with me and really break down certain things that I might not be able to talk to like everyone about. So I think just finding your clique and your group is really important, and whether that's in an org or even if that's not school related. And sometimes people want it to be completely not school related and find a group that are no master's program, so that won't even come up, and you'll really be able to kind of relax and dissect and just like unleash with them.
Yeah, I've found that I think the biggest resources are other students, to be honest. When I, doing a master's in class with the doctoral students, and the only difference is the number of the course. So it might be 600 or 700 or 800, right? But you're still doing the same work, right? You're doing the same readings. And I think for me, what was most beneficial was like, one, I would always do the doctoral assignments when I was a master's student, just so that I can already just get a feel for it. It was only just an extra 500 words, right? but also, different students are at different levels of their either writing toward the dissertation or, getting their portfolio admitted for full admission to a program, right? But I think them and just I still talk to all my former professors from Penn State too. So I always like to get a different view of certain things. So I would say that.
Yeah, I definitely second what Brian said. I did meet a really great group of students in my core classes my first semester, and we're still very close. But a unique perspective actually that I have is with this blog I write for. It's called Hack Library School. And it's made up of students attending library schools all around North America. We have one writer from Canada. We have several writers out in California, a couple in Illinois, just all over the country. And that kind of a unique insight to learn what's going on at other institutions, even though we're all going for the same master's degree or a very similar master's degree. Just learning about each other's experiences at our schools, the different programs that are going on, and kind of comparing our experiences, especially in this virtual land that we're in.
Absolutely. Thank you all. So I know we have only about like 3 to 4 minutes left. So with that, I wanted to ask you all each to, if you have one piece of advice for everyone who's in the audience about their transition to undergrad into their graduate programs. Sarah, especially for you as you are leaving and graduating with your master's this May. So what is that one piece of advice that you would have?
I would say just enjoy it. I know the last year plus at this point has just been a whirlwind for every area of our lives, but kind of remembering why you're in grad school, what you want to get out of it, and just seeing what's out there in the world. Definitely use that exploring time.
Yeah, I would piggyback off of that and say take a break before you enter in whatever program it is. This is going to be the most free time you will have before you enter in your program. So really to take advantage of that. And like I said before, just relax. Most people, especially in law school, and I'm sure in all programs, are going to be as confused, as nervous, and as lost as you are. So don't get caught up in that or doubt yourself or doubt your capabilities, because you got into the school for a reason, you got into the program for a reason, and you're more than capable of doing it. So don't let other people's quote unquote, they think they know it all, they don't. So don't let that affect the way you're going about your school.
Yeah, I agree. I think Dr. Eric Thomas says, take advantage of the opportunity of a lifetime and a lifetime of the opportunity. Your particular moment that you enter into grad school, it's a pivotal moment in your life, because that is the foundation for which you will then exceed beyond and go into, whether it's law, whether it's education, whether it's science, whether it's engineering, whatever you choose, whether it's library, whether it is chemistry, going to be a dentist. This is a foundational moment. So you want to like soak up everything. Take as many notes, journal. But like everybody is saying, also have fun. You don't have to, grad school is not as serious as you think. Sounds very serious, but like there is spaces where you can just relax a little bit, have fun, but also while you are making that sort of those marks for where you want to go after. So yeah.
Absolutely. I know we have about a minute left. So I want to just thank you all for your time today and all of your expertise. It is so incredible to see just such strong alumni like yourself succeeding in so many different areas. And I really appreciate the time that you took today to answer all of these questions and kind of help guide our current students in the audience into their next chapter. So with that, I'm just gonna quickly share my screen again. For all of you who are still here, we do have one more event going on tomorrow to kind of cap off senior week. It's our live chat with a career coach. You can see the full schedule of events through the bit.ly link listed there and on the liberal arts commencement website. And in addition to that, if you haven't already, or even if you have, please take your senior survey. This is something that we find really important, is seeing where our graduates are going and where that first destination is after they graduate with their undergrad degree. So we would love to hear from you all and hear what types of experiences you're either looking forward to, or if you need help finding those experiences afterwards. All right, so with that, I'm going to close out our panel. Again, thank you so much, Bria, Brian, Sarah, for all your time. I know you're super busy, so the fact that you took the time out today to talk with us is really special, and I really appreciate it. So have a great rest of your evening.
Take care, everybody.